Oh, the walk is going to have to go for longer this time. Oh, everybody's posting. Everybody's posting all the controversial stuff now. So good. So Tommy Sotomayor is back. He's back once again. Tommy Sotomayor. Boom, 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 Don DeMarco. So Tommy Sotomayor was back, and Tommy Sotomayor jumped on Twitter with a pretty serious take, because Tommy knows how to say things that hurt black folks. Because Tommy is black on both sides. Tommy knows how to hurt black folks. Tommy has that gift. Tommy is fast. He can insult you and he'll make it hurt. So what did Tommy Sotomayor say? Are black people cognitively inferior to whites? And it was very interesting to hear how many black men were chiming in, that there was I only got to hear one rather embarrassing, quote unquote, pro-black defender of the great race, but the other black men called in, and they were pretty much on Sotomayor's side with this, that they were like, if it doesn't take very long for you to realize that you are dealing with people that have a hard time forming complex sentences, holding on to complex ideas, especially the women. I don't care, this whole thing about the women tend to be smarter in their group. You hear it all the time. That when, especially once it gets into the realm of like abstract thought, especially on the internet, they have no language for it. So they're very smart about what they know. That's actually always one of those things. Very smart about what you know. And they know stuff that women would know about. And there's even, I remember there's a woman who made a post. She's like, yeah, for weird black guys, you should stay weird. And she got into, there's a lot of men who black women will date that they're interested in the same things. And said, a lot of you guys who are weird, you're interested in things that we don't know what you're talking about. She said that's why, like, you'll try to date, you'll try to date black women, and they it doesn't work out because you just are into things we don't know even what you're talking about. So it was, and I never put that aside. Like, men who are interested in like philosophy, politics, these are high level abstractions. They're kind of not real in a way. And so I get that, like, that black women, like any female of any group, would far more cater to practical issues. Just like what Briefolt was talking about with magic. Magic is naturally has always been the purview of women, always been linked to the moon and to water and to sea creatures like fish and serpents, and has always been linked to women, and it has always been practical. So the idea of the Christian deity is such a set of abstractions, such a high level of abstractions. The way that Judaism has evolved into the present era, such high level abstractions. What is practical, like with Judaism, it has practical things, like there are mitzvot, there are constantly blessings within the realm of creation, and you share mitzvot, so they go back and forth in a way. One shows glory to God, one is the benevolence of his benevolent energies returning. And so with Christianity, it's been harder for people to understand the practical, sort of this idea of the practical magic in your life. And so that's why it becomes this extremely abstract religion that mostly comes across as a whole bunch of rules, because it doesn't have the practical magic end of it that most people would think of. or that humans have always relied on in all form, across the species for about 10,000 years. This idea of practical magic. So that's a major reason why it's being abandoned. And so then you see something like where BLM, that women who were Obeah practitioners, and was it Ogun, Ifa Ogun religion, and it's practical. And one of the key things is that you do this thing of ambulating and shouting the names of dead people who are angry, bad dead people, evil spirits, and you use fire, fire and blood, Obeah, fire and blood. That's what BLM's deal was, and the 5% Nation figured this out fast. Lots of Christian groups saw it and they knew what they were seeing. No, I knew what I was seeing. They admitted it. They openly admitted it. And so but it's practical magic. That it's destructive magic to destroy things in the name of evil dead spirits. And so that you can gain power and cause fear and chaos and things like that in people. And look, it got them, not just did it get them a bunch of money, and with that money they then bought mansions, but then it did what magic does, what evil magic does. And now their mansions are being taken away and they're being looked into by the white authorities. Yes! So, the part about this that was then going on with, so you see, that's an intelligence thing. If you had read about why you shouldn't practice Obeah, which would require reading and that's a cognitive ability, then you would be like, oh, that great ages-long admonition about practicing Obeah is that at some point the spirits that you are playing with might play you out because they have their own price. That, and that's really the thing, is anybody who understands, like, that's actually precisely why, with especially the way the Christianity evolved, it's like, yes, because you don't know the price other spirits will ask of you. That's the point. And you won't learn until you engage with them and they charge you. So that's, that takes reading. That takes reading, and that's a worldwide phenomena. Like it's something that's even accepted by people who converted to Christianity, that they're like, yeah, that's an accurate way of putting that. That they've written about their former religions this way. So, the Tommy Sotomayor thing was interesting, especially being that it got this guy who was obviously a stutterer. He came across as autistic. And so it was sort of one of these things that there's a part of me that, as these guys are kind of, going off on him and stuff and messing with him, but he was wasting everybody's time. And I know Tommy at a certain point realized, like, no, this guy's wasting our time. He just doesn't know enough about shit. And he was also kind of making that really evident. Pro-blacks usually don't know enough about shit to really make any kind of coherent point. And they tend to be people who are not very well read on things, and it's because they don't like their feelings hurt. Because even knowing the accomplishments of a people, you then know some of the limitations. So this is one of the things that when he was, that as Tommy was talking about Black Americans, there's this part of me that kind of was like, okay, nobody's getting, this has been made a clear observation. Black people succeed as individuals and usually as family groups, like, and that alone, that's the biggest it gets, is like in a nuclear family group. The children will get wealthy. Like nobody really talks about Will Smith's son is obviously very, very, very smart and talented. How can I say this? Because he has taken all of his opportunities, and he's making tremendous amounts of money, and nobody knows about it. Like, only if you know about Will Smith's son do you know what he's done business-wise. I forgot about the kid. Remember he was on that He Will Not Divide Us stuff. Where is he now on that? Yeah, he's nowhere to be seen in that regard. And it's because he's doing what's really, really smart. He's staying out of the public limelight and just making money. And using because creativity that's a cognitive field, so he's using his brains to make money. And it also helps that his last name is Smith and his dad's first name is Will. But I mean, just plain out, he's doing what he's doing is very, very, very smart. He's the silent investor. There we are. He's the silent investor. And that's going to give him generational wealth now. Like, he's going to have more money than his own grandkids will be able to ever spend. And that's very smart, the way he's done that. So you find, and then you'll find people that I'm betting anyone could name the son or child of some famous black American, and they squandered it all, It's a thing of when you don't find family dynasties the same way that you find, say, in China. And one of the reasons why is because in China, there became various eras of time that whole family groups were rewarded or punished, and as a group. And it's a Confucian thing, if I remember correctly. And I think it's called the 3 generations or something like that. So that depending upon, in a Confucian society at one time, your family could be rewarded for 3 generations or punished for 3 generations. And it was some kind of Confucian thing. Something like that. It's like that type of setup. And then also because of the idea of there being their manorial system, where you would have sort of, the national, whatever, the regional government of the time, whoever is kind of running that village or region, it ran it kind of like a personal manor in a way. And so the Chinese manorial system came up, it set up families as benefactors. The French did the same. That's why we have French names for jobs. That's why when the French transferred that to the English, and that kind of setup ends up, creating these families that were rewarded for multiple generations by the local landlord for something that they did, and that creates then this multi-generational wealth that also creates in a breeding pattern. You actually have a family that's not really noble, but is kind of a little higher up than somebody who just literally just comes in out of Villiers, somebody who comes in out of sort of the back, the boondocks, and really these, super poor people who were just alive in the bushes and trees, so that's why that took hundreds and hundreds of years. And one of the keys to the success of manorialism succeeded. Key to it was also, why did manorialism start in a lot of places? The manor system started because of the Black Plague. So as the plague's killing off hella people, some people are gathering together. The person who kind of runs the place, who's strong, starts having the person who's the tailleur, or the cutter of drapery. You have the baker, you have a Baxter, you have all these various people who do something. And that literally not just militarizes a society against the Black Plague, but it also ends up creating multi-generational wealth for 1,000 years. that people actually were rewarded for, as a family, for succeeding for the local landlord. Now, it's mostly the girl HBD chick on YouTube who really, or on her blog, that she really maps this out beautifully. Why, and there's various manorial systems. So Japan does not quite get the same outcomes. They get similar outcomes, but not quite the same. The Netherlands had a manorial system that produced something similar. Now, also people would say, well, there's a lot of French culture that crept up there. But I mean, and I know some of you are going to be like, how dare you call me a Frenchman? Be cool. I know one of you is a Walloon, if I remember correctly. And so there's that. And so Tommy Sotomayor did his thing, and now Valuetainment just stepped into it. Oh, Patrick Ben-David just stepped into it. And he's discussing the entire background of how certain behaviors in our society went from insanity to normal. But he didn't know about the terrorism. He didn't know about psychiatrists being threatened with bombings, their families being threatened. He doesn't know about how the mob was protecting drug rackets at the clubs that certain kinds of people tended to go to, and that their group are associated with hard drugs. He doesn't know that. So he doesn't know that there's that tie to why suddenly society was like, that's cool. And that's the ugliest part. But he did nail how the big drug dealers, the pharmaceutical companies, know what's up. They know that this is a population that's going to be heavily dependent on psychiatric drugs for a good portion of their lives. Anti-anxiety meds, all kinds of things. And then the AIDS, HIV drugs. So they know they're going to do very well in this field for a very long time. And that really, in a way, totally can put it together in this manner. We are setting up a way that people can inexpensively treat their psychiatric or psychological issues with dignity, and it's something, it would be this kind of idea like these people could basically self-medicate as therapy is really kind of the idea. That you could make that sound good. You can make it sound like that's completely benevolent, and that's a good thing, and that everyone should be very thankful that the pharmaceutical companies are doing that. But really, a lot of us who understand the true dark side of all this, we actually do know, but there is the high likelihood of the shockingly large criminal element among this kind of group of people, that when you find that for some reason this is a group of people that seems to have kind of a fascinating propensity toward domestic abuse, high propensity toward like a man beating up a woman, that you find that, like, oddly enough, that it's like all of that the rainbow alphabet has a lot of that kind of thing going on. The kind of notoriously psychologically abusive relationships, like that's one that really, I mean, there's some times where you see people walking together and that you're like, yeah, I bet she really sucks to be in a relationship. And you could just tell, I do service work, so I get to talk to people all the time. There's people who you can just tell, I bet that's a treat. And the relationships don't last any longer than any of the kind of, normal, just unmarried dating relationships of any other group, anywhere else in the modernized world. So there's nothing special there. But one of the things that's come up is now you don't need to pass the physical standards. There's no physical standards for trannies in the military because now we're starting to admit they're special. They're a special class, and we all should be listening to them because their mommy says so. And that's it. There's nothing more to it. It's not that they're smarter, brighter, and more fascinating people. They write better. Nothing. We don't have any. They don't chin or run faster. So it's really that they're just inherently special. And the beauty of this one is this isn't going to last very long. Being that the people who really do the chins and get the militaries their wins are men with double shoulders. And so it's going to be kind of interesting to see over really about the next 2 years how this plays out. There's just not really going to be much way for people to fake it anymore. And now there's too many people that are figuring out, like, wait a second, this person says this, so let me look up the nadir in data. And they're going to find the nadir over and over and over again. Yeah. All right, later.